Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Beth Hawley with the Arizona Association of Realtors, and we're proud to bring you these free broker brief webinars designed exclusively to keep you updated on issues in the industry and AAR activities. Today we're talking about wire fraud. Joining us are Scott Drucker, AAR General Counsel, and Rick Mack with Mack and Scott. Today's presentation will be about 35 to 45 minutes long. If you have any questions, please write them into the question box and we'll try to get them answered as soon as possible. So as always, today's webinar will be recorded and available next week on our website at aaronline.com. So welcome everybody and let's get started. So Rick, let's start by having you explain to us how wire transfer fraud works.
Well, there's all sorts of ways it can work, but what we're seeing most commonly in our industry now is buyers being the targets. Most title companies who send disbursement funds out have fairly sophisticated cybersecurity practices in place so they don't get hit. The primary target is buyers wiring money to escrow. The scheme effectively is the fraudsters will tap into somebody's email account, typically an agent, and will figure out when the transaction is going to close. They will also lift the file number, get a handle on how much money needs to be deposited for earnest money and or the additional deposit before close of escrow. Send a phony wire instruction to the buyer, pretending like they're the escrow officer. They often steal the insignia, sometimes even a photograph, so it looks like it's coming from your escrow officer. And the email effectively says, please send your money to the account identified in these wire instructions. Buyers, not knowing any better, I mean, what's a buyer do 6 or 7 transactions in a lifetime on average, maybe less, not knowing any better, assume that the email is legitimate and they wire funds to a phony account. And then the bad guys take the money and run.
So I know there's no way to identify the number of wire fraud cases that have occurred in Arizona, but are you having clients contact you about this issue? And if so, what problems are they encountering?
Yeah, we've had several in the last quarter. We had 3. One for $48,000 that a retired librarian wired to a phony account. And then 2 more just recently, and I get these numbers a little bit confused. One for $86,000. 2 lawyers were the buyers there, and that one's a bit of a mess. And the other one's $168,000. All of them wired from buyers to a phony account. The last 2 I just talked about, they were able to trace the account to where the monies were deposited. It was in China, and the total amount in that account was $1.2 million. So these people are sophisticated, they're good, and they hit a target every now and then, and there's a lot of money they can take off with.
So quickly clarify for me, who's actually picking up the phone and contacting you? Is it the agent, or is it the buyers that have been defrauded? Who's reaching out to you directly?
Brokers are typically calling me.
Okay.
Good question. I don't get any. I haven't so far gotten calls from buyers, but I do get calls from brokers, and there's news travels pretty quickly in this industry. So one person gets hit, and then it's a little bit of a groundswell to, oh my gosh, what can I do? Do I have liability? How did this happen? How do I avoid it? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
So Scott, before we get into ways that can help prevent wire fraud, talk about what you should do if you learn that your client is a victim. Who do you call first?
Yeah, obviously, as Rick kind of alluded to, you need to act quickly. The faster you act, the greater the possibility that the funds can be recovered. And at AAR, what we've actually done is we created a flyer, and I'll just hold it up briefly so you can quickly take a look at it. I know you can't read it from where you are, but the flyer's on our website, and if you haven't pulled it up, I would encourage you to do so. In fact, I would actually encourage you to maybe distribute it to your agents, hang it in your office, because essentially what it does is it lists just 5 simple steps that you should take very quickly if you're a victim of wire transfer fraud. And the reason that I suggest you distribute it or hang it in your office is if a hack occurs, if someone is defrauded, they don't want to stop and start looking, go, oh, what should we do? Where do we find that information? But if it's right there in front of them, it may prove helpful. So let me just go through kind of the flyer a little bit, because it starts off by just saying that victims of wire transfer fraud must take immediate action. And of course, the first thing to do is to contact the financial institution that's wiring the funds. See if they can stop the wire before it goes out. If it has gone out, do they have the ability to rescind the funds that have already transferred? Can they put a freeze on any of the funds? So that the very first call needs to be to the financial institution. The second thing that we have on the flyer is to contact your local FBI field office. And we've got some contact information for the field office in Arizona, as well as a website where you can contact other field offices. And Rick, I think we've probably both spoken with FBI agents who have emphasized the need to contact them, but typically within 24 hours, we've had some success in recovering funds.
That's my understanding, is immediately if possible. And once 24 hours have come and gone, you might as well kiss the money goodbye.
It's a lot harder.
Yeah. Get back.
So definitely get a hold of your local FBI field office as quickly as you can. The third bullet point on the flyer is to file a complaint on the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center, right, IC3, and that's really just to formalize the complaint. The next bullet point is to notify all of the other parties to the transaction and for agents to notify their broker. So let's maybe break that down into the two parts. First is notify all the other parties to the transaction. Chances are, if someone's hacked the email, they may be sending emails that appear to be from you to the other people in the transaction. So if they hack the escrow officer, well, the escrow officer or the alleged escrow officer may be sending emails to the buyer, the seller, the lender, whoever it is. And so all of those parties need to know, hey, those emails may not have come from me. And then the second part was real estate agents should contact their broker. And I guess you could probably speak to why, if you're a broker, you want to know.
Yeah, I want to know so I can deal with it immediately. And most agents that are hacked or victims of this don't really know what to do. Brokers have a little more sort of knowledge, and I want to do what I can to sort of address it immediately. And one more point that Scott raised I want to touch on. The immediate issues we're seeing are buyers sending money to a bad account. That's easy. It's blatant. It happens right there. A point that was in what Scott was saying is this: there's a lot of personal information in a transaction, and some bad folks, these fraudsters, are getting that and maybe doing something later with it, opening a phony check account or a loan or whatever with some identity theft. So it's not just the immediate taking away of money, although that's what's got the attention. Mm-hmm. Once they're in your email, there's all sorts of gold in there they can mine.
Including selling that to third parties.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's an excellent point. And the final bullet point that's on the flyer, it's just stressing the importance of changing all of the passwords associated with any account that you believe may have been hacked. And I would actually expand on that. I would say, because you probably don't know the scope of the hack, so I would say change all your passwords, okay? Play it safe. Any password that you think could have possibly been hacked, change it so you can cut off any sort of access to that account as quickly as possible.
Yeah, great idea. Great advice.
So again, if you haven't pulled up this flyer on AAR's website, pull it up, take a look at it, distribute it to your agents, hang it in your office. I think it's a good resource.
So what are the danger signs, red flags that can signal wire fraud?
There's actually quite a few, and we can probably spend an hour going through all of them, but maybe we could just highlight some of them, and I'll kind of go through some of the ones off the top of my head, and you can chime in as we go. But I think the first one is changes to escrow instructions, especially last-minute changes to escrow instructions. Escrow instructions should not change. They typically will never change. And if they do change, they certainly should not change by way of an email.
Right. And the wire instructions are, you're going to get one set of wire instructions appeared in a story. So yeah, agreed.
Right. So any sort of change, alarm bells should be going off. That's an immediate red flag. The next one I would say would be poor grammar and misspellings. Admittedly, these scams are far more sophisticated than the ones we've seen in the past. You know, the Nigerian prince who's holding my $1 million for me. Thank you. Yeah. Those were rife with typos and grammatical errors. These are more sophisticated and they're better, but they're not perfect.
Right.
And so a keen eye can still pick up on some of those grammatical errors and spelling mistakes.
And this is not a grammatical error, but the use of the word kindly send your wires on that. For whatever reason, all the cases I've seen, the person that says kindly sends your money here and here.
Yeah.
Proper English, but a little bit awkward for our usage. So just when you see kindly, maybe you ought to think about it as well.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Another one, and this is a really subtle one, and it's certainly not a red flag in all instances, but it can be. If there's a change where all of a sudden you're being asked to wire funds on a Friday, and the reason for that is we talked about the fact if you know the funds didn't get where they were supposed to go, if within 24 hours, if you notify someone, there's a fair chance that they may be able to pull those funds back. But if you wire the funds on a Friday, chances are you're not going to know that they didn't get to where they were supposed to be until Monday, 2 full days later. And so they've essentially gotten away with the money because you haven't been able to act within 24 hours. So there's a great advantage to these fraudsters to have the money wired on a Friday. So if all of a sudden it's a rush, you get an email, everything's urgent, it has to be done today, and today's a Friday, I think that that's probably something that should concern you. It should raise a red flag.
Yeah, agreed.
The next one is when you hear from the escrow agent or sometimes the agent, if all of a sudden they can no longer be reached by phone. If they give you instructions and say, no, I'm sorry, you can only contact us by email, that's a red flag. We were at the National Association of Realtors convention, where was it? Just in Chicago. And I was sitting in a room with Nikki Salgin and JT Segas, and we were in a class, and the National Association of Realtors was going through an email chain all the way through, from when the account was first hacked all the way through to close of escrow. So you could see all the emails that went back and forth. And pretty early on, the fraudster all of a sudden started talking about that their son was sick. And they believed they found out they had a son through their Facebook page. And so they started setting up this scenario where the son was sick. And Nikki and JT and I were looking at each other going, why in the world are they getting into this? Well, through the emails, the son's condition is getting worse, it's getting worse, it's getting worse. And then on the day where the funds are supposed to be wired, all of a sudden the son's in the hospital, so the escrow agent can't be reached by phone. They can only be reached by emails because they're not allowed to talk on the phone where they are in the hospital. So right from the very beginning, they had been setting up this plot so that when it came time for the funds to go, they couldn't pick up the phone and call and confirm the instructions. Pretty devious.
That's super sinister, yeah.
So
the other related to that, but the other thing that the folks will do is they'll put a phony phone number on the fake email address, and if you call that number, Susie Smith, your escrow officer, will answer the phone. So some of them are even backstopping it a little bit and saying, hey, look, here I am.
Yeah, so
you do that as well.
If you get the email and it has a phone number in it, and you want to confirm the escrow instructions, don't call the number in the email. You've got to call a trusted phone number, one that you already have, that you have on a business card or that you've been using in the past, or go in directly and confirm them in person. Yeah. That's probably the best thing to do.
Exactly. Go back to the initial email, or God forbid, get up, look at the escrow officer in the face and say, okay, are these the proper wire instructions?
Yeah.
That's exactly.
And make sure that your client is contacting them. They're not waiting for a call, because the next step to this scam that we've seen is all of a sudden you get the instructions and the phone rings. And you pick it up and it goes, hi, I'm so-and-so's assistant. Just want to confirm, we did just send you an email with the escrow instructions. They're legitimate. You know, we always want to confirm everything by phone. But it's the fraudster that's calling, because they called you, you didn't call them.
Yeah.
So that's something to be aware of also. Another red flag that some people may not be aware of is use of what's called a SWIFT code. A SWIFT code is an 8 to 11 character identification code that's used for international wire transfers. So if you get escrow instructions and they're preceded by a SWIFT code, what that means is your money is leaving the country. It is going outside of the United States. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why is my money leaving the United States? We actually have a really good article on AAR's website that talks about SWIFT codes and deciphers them. And it goes through the codes and explains what they are. For example, if you're looking at a SWIFT code and the 5th and 6th characters in the code are CN, that means your money's going to China. So the first 4 characters show the bank, the second 2 show the country. And so having an understanding of these SWIFT codes and knowing where this money is going should raise an alarm, because, again, why are the funds leaving the country?
Shouldn't be going to China.
Right, exactly. Other red flags that
you see them all. I think they're super good. I just the bad language and the refusal or inability to talk to you on the telephone are the biggest ones in my mind.
Yeah, I agree.
So, Rick, I know some agents complain about a title company's use of encrypted emails, but the use of encrypted emails and avoiding free Wi-Fi all can be helpful, right?
Yes, and there's a dynamic here that's hard to deal with. We're all in a hurry. We all want to have instant gratification. We want our data immediately. And especially if you're on your cell phone and, God forbid, in your car, you can't really read very well if it's encrypted. So I've heard from a lot of title companies that get pushback from agents that they're unhappy, offended, feel like it's bad customer service if they get an encrypted email, because it takes them an extra 15, 30 seconds, whatever, to get it open and deal with it. My take there is, look, these title companies have spent millions of dollars trying to make these transactions secure. By you as an agent being lazy, in a hurry, impatient, whatever, you're kind of circumventing all the work and all the money they've done to keep you and your clients safe. So slow down, do the encrypted stuff, and think about this. We are sitting here talking about risk reduction for the broker. How can we avoid getting named in a lawsuit? How do we avoid not having to pay for this lost money? But think about from your client's point of view. $168,000 after tax, $86,000 after tax, $48,000 for retired librarian after tax. It's a lot of money, and on a personal level, it's a tragedy to them. The guy that lost $168,000 literally had what he thought was a heart attack. It's not a company, take him out in an ambulance. So it's a big deal to your client. So yes, let's avoid our risk and let's minimize what we can, but think about what your impatience might do to impact somebody's life in terms of, I want this data, I want this document right now, whereas the net effect of that sort of thinking and that behavior is sometimes catastrophic for people.
And when you talked about that encrypted emails are for protection, they're also for the agent's protection. It's not just the protection of the title company, it's for everyone's protection in the transaction. So yes, it could be a slight inconvenience, but agents need to realize that it's for their protection as well.
Right.
And then, Beth, I think the second thing that you mentioned in that question was about free Wi-Fi, right? About going down to Starbucks and logging to your Wi-Fi and start conducting, business, and with closing dates and property addresses and account numbers and escrow numbers and all of the details that go into a transaction about doing that by way of free public Wi-Fi as opposed to a VPN.
The bad guys can get into Wi-Fi like a hot knife through butter. So yes, avoid doing business with free Wi-Fi. That's just a recipe for disaster. They're going to find it. Any of you that went to the Industry Partners Conference in September, I think, there were a couple FBI agents up there that were telling us, and they effectively, as a matter of fact and very nonchalantly said, the bad guys are in your phones. They can get almost whatever they want out of that stuff. So by you doing the public Wi-Fi, wherever it be, I don't want to just badmouth Starbucks, but wherever there's public Wi-Fi, that is a prime opportunity for these hackers to get in there and steal your data, monitor what you're doing.
So Scott, how do brokers and agents inform clients about wire fraud and help them protect themselves?
I mean, first and foremost is a conversation, right? Sitting them down. I don't know at what point the earlier the better, but at some point make the time to advise them of this issue. They may not be aware that this problem is sweeping the country and that people are losing hundreds of thousands of dollars on a daily basis. So having the conversation is important. Something else I see agents doing is having email signature templates. So right at the bottom of their email, there's a notice, often in bold red letters, letting them know, hey, do not trust wire instructions that are sent via email. Or sometimes the agent's letting them know, I'm not going to ask for financial information by way of email. So if you get that, it's not from me because I'm not going to be sending you those sorts of emails. So I think having that notification at the bottom of the email is helpful. And then there's also a tool that AAR has developed, and it's essentially it's called a wire fraud advisory, and it's for agents to utilize and to provide to their clients. It's on our AAR's website, and what's interesting is that it's on AAR's website in Word format. This advisory is not subject to copyright, so you can get on and take it in Word format and make it your own. You want to brand it? Go ahead and brand it with your brokerage. You want to take certain portions of it and only use those portions? That's fine. You want to add to it? That's not a problem. So the document is there really to make it your own. But what it essentially does is it has an opening paragraph where it gives what I think is a pretty good explanation of wire fraud and what it is, very similar to the explanation that Rick gave at the beginning of this webinar. And then it goes through three very important points. And we tried to keep this concise because we all know that getting buyers and sellers to sit and read lengthy dense documents is difficult. So if we can do it by short bullet points, sometimes that's helpful. So the first one is, right, do not trust emails containing wire instructions. And we talked about that. You shouldn't be getting wire instructions by way of email, and they shouldn't be changing. And if you do, call the escrow officer at a trusted phone number or go in and talk to them in person. Also, do not trust emails that are seeking personal or financial information. No one in this transaction should be asking you for that sort of information, asking clients for that sort of information by way of email. Trust your source of information. Make sure that you know who you are getting these emails from. And if you have any concern about that, if all of a sudden you're getting something from their Yahoo email address as opposed to their title company email address, question that, right? Ask why. If you get an email, instead of hitting reply to the email, which is going to go back potentially to the fraudster, hit forward and type in the email address that you know to be correct, because sometimes you can study those email addresses and you may not see the difference, right? Maybe an R and an N are very close together and it looks like an M, but it's not. And so it provides just some basic instructions to the clients. It gives them some online resources, websites where they can go and get additional information. And then it's just asking them to sign, acknowledging that they've received the wire fraud advisory. And look, it's not a cure-all, but I think it's a good way to convey this information to the client, to put them on notice so that they're aware of this issue and aware that, hey, this is a serious problem.
So, Rick, do you see your broker clients using advisories such as this? Anything else they're doing?
Yes, I hope they do. And whether they adopt the AAR form, a lot of the brokers in town already have their own forms. They should use it. I hope they do. And as Scott said, it's really a platform for a discussion. It's, hey, read this, let's talk together about what's going to happen. Because if the buyers, especially buyers, are aware of the issue up front, when they get that email asking for the money to be wired, they're going to trigger, oh yeah, I need to think, I need to be careful here. Virtually every plaintiff I've ever deposed in any lawsuit says, yeah, I guess I got that document, and yeah, I guess that's my signature, but I didn't really read it. They gave me an 1.5 inch stack of stuff, and I just signed it. This document, the wire fraud advisory, is 1 page long on purpose. Pull it out of the stack, put it in front of your buyer, seller, whomever, and have the conversation with them. That's probably, at least in this market with this sort of environment, one of the single most important documents you can use. So don't bury it, don't go through it, don't say, oh, my broker makes me sign this, just sign it. No, get it done, have the conversation. And really it's as simple as when you get wire instructions, give me a call, let's go over these together. Don't wire money without talking with me. It's almost that simple. And again, the FBI guys at the Industry Partners Conference said that sort of dialogue could eliminate 60 to 70% of this stuff. So it's really designed to be a conversation piece, not a form to check off your list and put it in your file to get your commission paid. Have the conversation.
And it also gives them information in case they decide they don't want to wire money. Yeah, right. There's other options.
Exactly right.
Certified check. I mean, so they may look at this and go, you know what? This is pretty scary stuff. I think I'm just going to steer clear and I'm going to get my money there in a different way. And that's fine if that's their choice. And that may not be a bad choice.
No, it might slow the transaction down a day. Certified funds, I think they have to season for 24 hours. But boy, next time I buy a house, I think I'm going to get a cashier's check. I'm just not going to do it.
So let's chat about the broker policies AAR has drafted. And as you go through them, Rick, please chime in. Scott,
sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we both have them in front of us. What we did was brokers, and I'm glad this is a broker webinar because it's the perfect audience for this, is brokers have policy manuals. And their policy manuals, because this is a relatively new issue, your policy manual may not have something specifically in regard to cybersecurity and then something specifically in regard to wire transfer fraud. And so we came up with language that you can review, and if you'd like, insert some or all of it into your policy manual, because I think it's beneficial to have some policies in place in regard to both cybersecurity and wire transfer fraud. So, and this again, the document's on AAR's website. If you go to the Manage Risk tab, you scroll down, you'll see a wire fraud. Click on that. All the AAR resources are right there for you. But for cybersecurity, I think it lists some good advice, and it starts with passwords, right? Strong passwords, not just the name of your dog, right? not just ABCD or not password. You see
Or your
that a lot.
birth date, or
Right.
simple stuff.
Regularly change your passwords and don't use the same password for everything, because they hack into one thing. You can be sure they're going to try everything else with that same password. And to the extent they're successful, well, that's unfortunate, because it could have been prevented if there was different passwords for all the different accounts. Email security: do not open suspicious emails. Do not click on suspicious links. There's companies out there that send test emails to their employees, that appear to be from a source that they wouldn't know, with a suspicious link, and they're trying to see who's going to click on it, because they want to use it as an education point of education to make sure they understand, hey, don't do that.
Yeah, as fascinating as it might look, don't click.
Yeah, clean out your emails on a regular basis, and as you talked about previously, don't object to encrypted emails, because they're being used for a
helpful.
purpose.
They're there for a reason. Exactly.
Then there's a section here on wireless use, about free Wi-Fi. Consider using a VPN. Things that agents may want to remember. Use of electronic devices. Make sure that your devices are locked, right? That they have a password, whether it's your iPhone or whatever it may be. Don't leave them open and walk away from them. That's a problem, especially in public. Software: make sure that your agents have antivirus software on their computers, that they're updating it, that their data is backed up. Record keeping and disposal. That's actually something to keep in mind. Agents at times, and we dealt with this a lot in the short sale era, were getting a lot of personal, confidential financial information, and they were keeping it, and they were maintaining it, and they were holding it.
And sometimes in the backseat of their car that got broken into,
Right.
or stolen.
Yeah. So make sure that at the appropriate time and in the appropriate way, you're disposing of that information. And there's actually something that's called the Fair and Accurate Transactions Act. And it's a federal law, and real estate firms, by the way, are governed by this act, and it's often referred to as FACTA. And it defines the proper disposal of consumer information. There's articles, again, on AAR's website. If you go in and you type in the name of that act, and it's the Fair and Accurate Transactions Act, it's going to talk about how you as a broker, how you as an agent need to dispose of this confidential information. And you are subject to this law, so you should make sure that you're following it. And then the last one under cybersecurity is be careful what you're posting online on Facebook, right? I know you're excited or your agents are excited. They've got a big closing coming up. They've been working on this deal for a long time. It's been problematic, and they want everybody to know, finally, here it is. We're closing on X date, and, thank you so-and-so at this security title company, or this title company, for all of your help.
And with the property address.
Right. Yeah. That information doesn't need to be made public on social media, and your agents should avoid doing that.
Yeah, Facebook is difficult for all sorts of reasons, that being one. The other piece is it's advertising, and the commissioner has said, hasn't, that I know of, investigated any of it, but posting real estate activity sure looks like advertising to me, and 99 out of 100 agents don't have their broker name anywhere on their Facebook post. So be really careful with that Facebook stuff.
Yeah, if you're advertising properties, you're essentially conducting business, and that's advertising, and so you need to have your brokerage displayed in a prominent manner. And I think you're right. We probably do see a lot of violations in that regard. Yeah. So that's really the cybersecurity portion, and some of the things that we recommend be inserted into the broker manual for cybersecurity. And then there's another section, things in regard to wire fraud, and it starts with making sure your clients understand that they do have to have a discussion. Your agents need to make sure that they're having a discussion with their clients about the issue, that they're confirming any sort of wire instructions in writing, that they're talking to clients about this issue that they're using. If the brokerage has an advisory, they want to make sure in their policy manual it states that, hey, this advisory, it's not just here for your entertainment. You actually have to utilize it throughout the transaction. Sometimes brokerages will put in the email template signature that we talked about earlier. Brokerages will have some mandatory language, and if you don't have it, NAR has some proposed language on its website. The brokers will put in the language in their policy manual that they want all their agents to put at the end of their emails. And then it has a section that talks about reporting cybercrime, similar to the things that we put on the discussed from the flyer earlier. Steps that the broker wants the agent to immediately take in the event that there's a hack. So take a look, brokers, take a look at these policies, see if there's anything on here that you're in here that you think is beneficial that you want to take and insert into your own broker policy manual.
And how about a resolution for 2018? If you brokers are going to update your policy, which you should, send an email blast to all of your agents saying, hey, we just updated our broker policy procedure manual as to cybersecurity. Please take a look. This is a hot topic, coming trend. Let's have a safe and prosperous 2018. Perfect timing. Going to change it now.
And in case you're interested, on the Arizona Department of Real Estate website, they maintain a model broker policy manual, and Holly Esslinger was kind enough to essentially rewrite and update that just a couple months ago. I think it became effective and was posted on ADRE's website. So there's an entirely new updated broker policy manual model on ADRE's website. If you're interested in updating yours, go in and take a look at what Holly Esslinger has prepared, see if there's some sections in there that you think are beneficial and that you want to add to your manual.
Yeah, good.
Because Holly really did a great job with that.
Great. I think that was it for all the questions. Any closing thoughts?
I just have one. In terms of that wire fraud advisory, what we're hoping you do, what we're hoping becomes common practice for everybody out there, is at the very beginning of the relationship, have the discussion about agency, use the ready form like you're supposed to, have the discussion about affiliated business arrangements, if your brokerage has a titler, lender, or whatever, have that discussion. And third, have the discussion about wire fraud. If you start making that a habit, there are 3 things I need to talk about every single time with every single client. We can help protect these people from the bad folks out there looking to steal their money.
We think alike. Maybe it's because we worked
Did I steal your
together for
thunder?
13 years before I came over to AAR. But yeah, I was going to say the key to all of this is simply communication, is having the discussion with your clients. They're not knowledgeable about this. They may be sophisticated individuals. They may be the world's top surgeon. That doesn't mean that they're knowledgeable about wire transfer fraud. They don't live necessarily in our world. And so make sure you're taking the time to educate them, because they could be targets and they need to be prepared in order to be able to defend themselves.
Well, thank you, everybody. And thank you to our viewers for joining us today. Our next Broker Brief webinar will be on March 15th. So everyone have a great day and happy holidays.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.